Today we'll be talking about HTML5 canvas that has to do with drawings and images on the HTML pages. So it would allow us to do some processing on the images that we would like to include on our web page. So we will talk about HTML5 canvas as well as JavaScript, and we will see some simple drawings. Right, here we can, we're just saying here that we can use Notepad for Windows if we want to write some plain text file or HTML5. We can use the text edit app on the Mac. There is also some online tool where you can use the Notepad++ online. The important thing here is that when we create our web page, when we write our HTML code, it should display the same in all browsers. That is the goal. So the browser is a silly application which the only thing it does is to reads the HTML code and displays it properly formatted on the screen. So all of the browsers, no matter which one it is, once it reads the code, it should be displaying the same thing on the screen. If we want the browser to do anything more complex than that, we have seen in one of our exercises that the browser, it needs to either call a helper application or it needs a browser extension. So if it is to do anything other than read HTML code and display it on the screen, it needs either a helper application or an extension. So its main task is just to read the HTML and display it. If it needs to read open Word documents, if it needs to play sounds or videos, then it's gonna call a helper application, either Microsoft Word or a media player of some sort to play the sounds and the videos. But the idea is that here is about the HTML, that whatever HTML code we write, all those browsers, it is their job to display the code properly and in the same way as all the others, so that no matter who is going to open our web page and on what device and on what browsers, it should be looking the same all around everywhere. Okay, let's going to save this. Let's look at some graphics, drawings, pictures on the, if we want to have drawings or pictures on the HTML page. Here's a canvas. So we're talking about canvas with HTML5. So we can come here, the HTML document starts. The next thing here is the head declares the start of the document and the language. Next we have a header. We can include a JavaScript file in the header. And there comes the section where we will be drawing this rectangle on the HTML page. So in this 2 lines of code here, we will create a canvas. The canvas ID is my canvas. So, and then we specify the width and the height of this canvas. So in terms of pixels, so they are important because they will define the size of the canvas as it will appear on the screen. So it is important that the JavaScript code uses ID width and height. And the last thing we have here, the end of the document. Most of the changes we would make into this code are inside the canvas. If we want to place any words, text, pictures or drawings, they would go inside the canvas. So let's see how we can draw a rectangle in JavaScript. So there we're using a file called simplerectangle.js. We are defining a variable here called the program. It's an object that allows us to have functions inside, and that are independent or separate from the rest of the functions or any global variables around the code of our within the code of our HTML. So the main function here main is a member function of the program class. It identifies the entry point function that is called right after the page loads. And next we have this canvas here. So the canvas is equal to document.getElement by ID. And we had defined earlier my canvas. So we're calling this element called my canvas. In the end, here we have something called window_onLoad function. As soon as the main function is called, this also gets invoked here. So window_onLoad is automatically called. The event occurs after the HTML page has been loaded, including any of its contents, images, cascading style sheets, and scripts. After everything is finished loading, then the main function is executed. Okay. So in the first line we have document.getElement by ID. We said we already defined this my canvas. So this is handle, which means it's like a pointer to the canvas element. The HTML file has a canvas element with ID my canvas. On the next line, we can access the context of the drawing. This context defines where we will draw our figure. In this case, we are drawing the rectangle. So the stuff like whatever we want to draw here. Alright, so context, the canvas.getContext 2D, it means it's a two-dimensional graphic. The rectangle is a two-dimensional graphic. Then we will give it a color. So context.fill style, and we can tell the number of the color. In the HTML, we have the colors defined with these codes here. You can see the codes on the right side here. In this case, we have given a color AAA, which is just gray color. On the next line, we will tell how big we want the rectangle to be in terms of pixels. So we're saying 300 by 200. The rectangle is as big as the canvas, so it's gonna take up the whole space, and then we will fill it with the color as well. So we're saying which space here, exactly pixels and their location. So 0, are the corners of where it is located, and then the size 300 by 200, and we will fill that space, pixels, with the color gray. If we want to put an outline on the rectangle, like you see here, it has the black outline, then we can say context.stroke rect, and then we say if we don't give it a color, it will just use black color. The black is the default, it's just set to all zeros, and the color is set to all zeros, and which is the black color. So we have drawn a canvas here, and a rectangle, filled it with gray color and gave it an outline. Let's see a little bit more complex. Processing with this rectangle. It was a two-dimensional rectangle. We remember in the code we said the canvas is 2D. This right here, what you see, is a three-dimensional. It appears to be three-dimensional, as we have moved the rectangle from one place to another, and also during the movement we rotated it. So we can rotate rectangle like this on the screen. Let's see the JavaScript code for this, we would have to include a source file called looprotate.js. So the JavaScript file name is changed from the previous example here, and also the canvas size is changed. The width is now 320 and the height is 240. So let's see how it is going to rotate here. So in the main function, we have the canvas document.getElementById myCanvas. We have the gray background, main function, same as the previous example. But instead of one rectangle, we're going to use a loop and we will draw a series of rectangles. We can give them a different color as well, so they're better visible on the screen than the previous one was just gray with same as the background. So now we can give it another color. For example, this turquoise cyan color. Light blue. The border is the same. We have the black border. So context fill style, and here you give this light blue turquoise cyan color. 00FFFF is the code for the color. The width, we can define the width of the line, how thick we want this black outline to be. In this case, we say line width equals to 3. So that the border is more thick than what we have seen earlier. Alright, so we're drawing series of rectangles with blue color and a thicker border. So let's see here. We will need a loop in order to do something like this. To draw the multiple rectangles, we'll use a for loop from 0 to 50. So it will have 50 iterations. That's gonna draw 50 rectangles in here. Counts from 0 to 49. On the next line, we have a time parameter t. This one is used to control the rotation of how much it's going to rotate. So translation and rotation amounts. The next line, context set transform. And we can tell here how much we want it to move. So, for example, Okay. So there is a matrix that is used here to rotate the triangle, like, I mean, the rectangle, the way we're seeing it on this picture. So the set transform function, has 6 parameters which are given in the order A, B, C, D, E, F. The first parameter scales the drawing horizontally. The second one skews the drawing horizontally. The third one skews the drawing vertically. The fourth one scales the drawing vertically. The fifth one moves the drawing horizontally. And the sixth to last one moves the drawing vertically. As we can see, these are just binary parameters, so either they're set or they're not set. So if we come in here and we say 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, it basically means the first one will be triggered, number A, scales the drawing horizontally, and the fourth one will be triggered, scales the drawing vertically. So the others are set to 0. So that is what this line here is doing. And then the next example just translate, scale, and rotate. We can tell it for how much we want it to translate. So let's say 270 times t is the time, or 220 times t. So that's for the translation. For the scale, 1 times t times 1.5, and for the rotation, t times 3.5. That is what we have here. And then we start to draw it. So context, begin, path. Begin path. So it's gonna start on the bottom here, and it will rotate and move to the right. So it moves both vertically and horizontally because it's kind of moving diagonal position. But here, context, begin, path. So begins or resets a path. When we're done with the path, when it's done doing what we want it to do, how do we stop it? So in the end, we'll say context close path. So between the begin path and the close path, we would say what do we want the rectangle to do. So what do we want to do? Context rectangle 3020. Draws a rectangle with opposite diagonal corners and of size 2030, 3020. So it will be transformed based on the current transform matrix that we have chosen. This right here. We have only the first and the fourth set, the A and the D. That's our matrix. So it is transformed based on the current matrix. And then it's filled with the color, this light blue turquoise color that we have chosen. So that is how we can draw rectangles and have them rotate. A couple of more things that we can try here is we can change the background size. We can tell how big it is, how small it is. We can increase the size of the rectangle, or we can fill it with a different color. So these are a couple of suggestions that can be done on the code that we have seen. And in terms of rotating it, other things can be chosen in our matrix. We can, for example, choose to skew the rectangle before it is drawn by using save and store. We can change the matrix state. Or we can try to draw a different figure. Instead of a rectangle, it can be a triangle or an oval or an arc, for example. So these are the ways of how we can draw a rectangle and do some movement of the rectangle on the screen, as well as fill it with colors and draw an outline around it. So that is all that we have for the HTML5 canvas.